Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Forecast. I'm your StormTracker8 meteorologist, Madison Olms, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Miss Mary Catherine Price. Not today, but we are still going to have a lot of learning to do on this episode of Beyond the Forecast. So, Mary Catherine, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Yesterday, you mentioned to me that some of these would be real educational, and I love to learn, and I know nothing about the weather, so I'm excited to learn today.
We are all here to learn. This is a learning experience for me, for all of our viewers, and we just get to go along for the ride. So we do have our poll again for today. If you do have a question for us during Beyond the Forecast, feel free to scan that QR code that you see on the screen right now by this white box, and if we take this graphic away, we will have that QR code as well at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So you can ask all throughout the episode today. I do want to dive into some of the weather that we may be experiencing or what we could even have seen in the past. So for our weather history today, in 1964, a winter storm did produce 5.3 inches of snow in Richmond, which is pretty crazy. We saw that earlier in this winter season, but we are looking to be pretty dry and pretty unseasonably warm right now as well. And even in 1982, another winter storm that we had produced 7.1 inches of snow in Richmond. Mary Catherine, wow. I don't know if you're a snow fan or if you like these warmer weather.
I love snow. Oh. It was one of the reasons why I chose to go to school in Boston for college, because I was like, I'm chasing the snow, because we never got enough growing up here. I was born and raised here, so I grew up here, and I can only remember like 3 good snow days ever. And so I went to Boston for school chasing my snow dreams.
That's fair. I grew up in Chicago.
You're used to
a lot of folks know, but I do like the snow. I think it's gorgeous. It does get a little bit on my nerves when we start to see that melting and that all that slushiness. So I have a love-hate relationship with it. I do like the cooler temperatures, though, and bundling up in some of our winter weather gear. So that is something that I do like to look forward to with snow. Even though we aren't seeing snow today, it is an absolutely stunning day. It's not out of the question that we see snow in January, but that just hasn't been the case here. This is taking a look out at our Rockets landing camera over the James River. Lots of blue in the sky, and we are seeing above average temperatures, which is something like we've seen for much of the month of January. Were you a fan of those warmer temperatures last week when we were almost near 70 degrees for some of those days?
I thought I would be mad about it because I am like more of a cold weather person. I love the scarves and the sweaters. I love bundling up, but it was actually nice. Like, I spent a lot of time outside with my dog, who we have a fenced in backyard, and he loves to play fetch. So we did a lot of fetch, and I wasn't freezing my toes off, so that was like a nice little change.
Yeah, that is a plus. I feel like, the cold weather, great, you can bundle up, have your coffee, your hot chocolate, but then when it does get a little too frigid, especially when we do see snow and you have to clean off your car, that has to be one of the worst experiences. When you're in 20-degree weather, your hands are frozen, you can't feel your fingers anymore when you're trying to clean it off. So it was a nice little surprise, even though it's very unusual for this time of year in January. Even over the weekend, we're starting to cool down a little bit, 65 on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we saw 58 degrees as our high, but that was actually what we saw very early in the morning. That was probably before many of us woke up. And then yesterday, 50 degrees, closer to average, but still not quite where we're used to being at. This is a temperature trend that we have throughout the entire year. So this takes data over the last 10, even to ranging the 30 years, and that's that red line that we see as those average temperatures for each month once it's completed. We see 44 degrees, though, in January. That's our average temperature so far this month from a preliminary report from the National Weather Service, which is a little unusual. So again, I don't know if you were a huge fan of the warmer temperatures, but I thought this was so interesting to see, since normally our average temperature in January, once the month is over, is about 38.3 degrees. I don't know if you're a fan of those numbers, if you do like to see them a little bit higher after that cold spell passes through. But we can take a break, and then I do want to talk about some of our precipitation types that we'll be seeing throughout different winter events that we could experience or just throughout the year in general. So this is a quick recap of those different precip types. We have rain, freezing rain, sleet, and snow. And we can see there that there's different levels of the temperatures and how we can see what type of precipitation is associated with what type of air level. And a lot of folks may be wondering how that could affect our system coming in on Thursday. So I do want to break that down a little bit. This is Wednesday at 10 a.m., and we're starting to see this cold front starting to make its way closer and closer to us. But another system, or this system specifically, is forming in that Ohio Valley. So southern Ohio, heading into Kentucky, even portions of Tennessee, and it's going to keep moving along, and that cold front will be just on the cusp of the Commonwealth by Wednesday afternoon. So we're still going to be staying dry and seeing some really nice conditions, some warmer conditions, I should say. We'll still have some clouds, but those temperatures are still going to be pretty seasonable. But then come Wednesday night, that's when we start to see that other low pressure system a little bit closer to us here, closer to Maryland, over Pennsylvania, and that cold front starts to make its way through. We're seeing that cold air track behind that cold front, and then overnight from Wednesday into Thursday, that's when we see our next best chance for rain pop up on the board there. So we're going to see a lot of green, but there are those few hints of blue. This is Thursday at 3:30 in the morning. That's usually when we're starting to see our temperatures cool down quite a bit for the day. We usually see our low temperatures early in the morning, but it does take us till around 6 or 7 a.m. to see those cold temperatures, especially drop below freezing when we're seeing a potential for some winter precipitation. Now, by Thursday at 9 a.m., that system moves completely out of the way. So we saw a little bit of blue there, and that could hint that we may be seeing some snow flurries. But given the timing of the system, I'm anticipating a fully rain event. But I'm figuring, since everyone's kind of questioning, what are we going to see? What do we need to have? And what conditions do we need to have to see snow for those snow lovers out there? I wanted to break down some different precipitation types. So, Mary Catherine, you said you like snow and you love the cold. I wanted to start off with what we need for snowy conditions. Do you have any questions that I can answer for you before we do a deep dive?
I don't think so. We did get a question from a viewer, though.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Mia Wilson sent us a question.
When do we think we'll have another good chance of snow? That is a great question. Right now, none of our long or short range models are showing that we could be hinting at another big snow event, but this is something that we're always tracking and want to keep an eye out for, because like some of our snows that we saw early in this winter season, they blew up pretty quickly, and it was over the course of not even 48 hours that we saw maybe just a dusting in one of the first model runs, and then within 24 hours it really amped up and we had a Viper alert day in place. So that is something that we're always continuing to track, but right now the models aren't steering towards any major snowfall, nothing like that we had seen with those winter storms in the future. I'm hoping that answers your question, but we are always here to track those systems for you guys. And I do want to break down what we need for snow specifically. Usually our snow, when we see it, we have at or below freezing conditions, and we see our clouds that are high up in the atmosphere, and they're always very, very cold up there, much cooler than what we're feeling at the surface. And that air that's that very cold up at the top of the atmosphere is still going to be reaching down to the surface at or below that freezing level. So that's why snow is able to continue to fall, and that snow remains snow because that freezing layer is stretching down all the way to the ground. And that's kind of what I was hinting at for coming on Thursday. How likely are we to see snow? I'm not anticipating this is going to be a snow event where we see much accumulation, if any, at all. I'm anticipating an all-rain event, really, and maybe just a few flurries there by the time many of us are waking up. So I'm hoping that's okay with you, Mary Catherine.
I mean, I guess. So if I'm wrapping my head around it, what you're saying is because that air between the clouds and the ground is not going to be cold enough?
Yes.
That's why we won't likely see snow on Thursday?
Correct. So we always start off very cold at the top of our atmosphere where those clouds are at. It's always going to be below freezing up there. If it's not, we have some other
Something's
problems.
Wrong. Yeah.
But as we continue to see that precipitation fall, our air warms closer and closer to the surface, and that's usually what gives us rain. But then we have other types of precipitation that also maybe will start off as snow, and then we see a little bit of melting in that layer, and then we start to refreeze again. So the next precipitation type I wanted to talk about was sleet, and this is when you see that freezing near that those cloud layers up in the atmosphere, and then that snow starts to melt in a warmer layer that is still above the surface, but then there's another freezing layer as it's continuing to fall, and then it refreezes before it even hits the ground. So that's why we start to see kind of little ice pellets that fall onto the ground, and this is also a type of precipitation I just don't think we're going to be seeing on Thursday. If there is that crossover from non-freezing temperatures to freezing temperatures, I think it's going to be very brief, and I don't think it's going to allow us to see different layers have the dramatic shifts in temperatures that we need to see for this type of precipitation. Have you experienced a lot of sleet, especially up in Boston?
I don't know if I would have known what sleet was just walking around, actually, because I guess the precipitation that I feel like I've seen most here is obviously we see snow, we see rain, but we also see a lot of like hail sometimes.
Okay, yeah.
So hail is more of a like warm weather vibe, right?
Yes, so there's a lot of convection that goes on with hail, and I don't have a graphic on that today, but we can definitely do a deep dive in it later on. But you see a lot of kind of back and forth with hail. It starts to fall, and then it's warming, and then it refreezes when there's a lot of air that lifts it back up, and then it's kind of a back and forth scenario. So you need a lot of lift in the atmosphere, and that's when we typically see a lot more severe weather versus maybe an all-snow event or some of that melting in those different layers that we have before we reach the ground. I'm sure you have seen some icier conditions here, though. You're from Virginia. You experienced it in Boston, I'm sure.
Yes.
Our next precipitation type I want to touch on is freezing rain. And so we still see that frozen layer across the top in our upper atmosphere. And then you have a thicker layer of that warmer air that's above freezing. So that snow starts to melt into rain after it enters that warmer area or that warmer layer of air. And then we see refreezing again, but this time it's at the surface instead of before it hits the ground. And that's why we're usually seeing icier conditions when we have freezing rain, because that rain will freeze upon contact with our super cold surface. So that I'm sure, even though you love snow and you love the cold weather, this is not the type of precipitation you'd want to be seeing.
No, and I remember, I guess it was the second like winter storm we saw, which was a lot more snowfall in December. Yes. I had a hard time just getting up my driveway. Like once things started to melt and then refreeze, I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of treacherous.
Right.
So
yeah,
no,
so
not the ice.
Right. That event all fell as snow, but we saw a lot of warming during the day, which is then what gave us all those wet road conditions. But then overnight, it got really, really cold again and refroze over the surface and gave us icy roads. It gave us black ice in some areas because you had just that pure water starting to refreeze, and you couldn't really see it on the roads as well. So that's what made it really, really dangerous. Both freezing rain and black ice and refreezing of snow is just as dangerous, one or the other. It's just not a great condition to be in. And when you have your temperatures or your surface temperatures at freezing, that's when it gets really, really dicey, because you're seeing the rain fall, but then once it hits the surface, that's when it gets dangerous because it's automatically turning to ice instead of having that transition phase like you see in sleet, where at least it's not icing over. It's just a different, heavier type of precipitation than a raindrop or the ice pellet upon surface. And then the last one that we have is rain. We all know it. Maybe some of us love it, maybe some of us don't, but we have that freezing layer up at the top again, at the very top of the atmosphere there, and then you see that warm layer stretching all the way down to the ground. So this is when that snow up in the atmosphere will just melt to rain, And then those raindrops continue to join us all the way down to the surface, which is what gives us those really wet and slick roadways. But it also helps a lot of scenarios. We're in a severe drought right now across the state, or in portions of the state, we're in a severe drought. And many of us, at least in a moderate drought, or still just very dry in general. So it's all very beneficial, but this is probably the one folks know the most other than snow, I'd imagine.
Right, and I love a rainy day. Just like I like snow, I love a rainy day too. My dog does not like a rainy day though. He liked the snow, he does not like the rain though.
Does he have a little rain jacket if he has to go out in the snow?
He doesn't. Oh. He has got one of those like waterproof coats. He used to not care.
Okay.
And then I think he saw the snow and was like, oh, this is way better than the rain. Mm-hmm. And then now that it's back to rain, he's like, why would I want to go out in that? You're crazy. So
I don't blame him, but it is beneficial. And on a rainy day, you can cozy up, get a book, get a nice coffee. It's similar to a snow day, but maybe just a little bit warmer in some scenarios. But that is mostly all I had for our precipitation types today. I do want to take a look at what we have for the week ahead. We're still going to be really pleasant today on Tuesday, 56 degrees, mostly sunny skies, and then we're starting to see one more warm day on Wednesday, 57 degrees, and then that cold spell kind of starts on Thursday when we're also supposed to see our next rain chances, potentially a few flurries if the timing is all right. And then those cold conditions are hanging around for the rest of the weekend and on Monday. I know a lot of people have Monday off for MLK Day, so that is something to look forward to. You're going to be dry, and we're going to see some sunshine there. It's just going to be cold, but it is starting to feel like January, and I'm kind of ready for the cold temperatures personally.
Yeah, we're one and the same.
Yeah.
You and me. we can get going with the cold weather anytime. Yeah.
When I'm too warm, it's not too comfortable for me. So
I'd rather be cold than be overheated.
Yeah, I'd rather have all the layers. And you can always add layers. You can't take them off.
Not without getting a little crazy. So,
well, I hope your dog is okay with the cold just like you are. I'd imagine you're probably going to be taking him out on some walks over these next few days when we're still pretty nice outside, and then even when we have to get a little bit colder too.
Yes.
Right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on this episode of Beyond the Forecast. If there are any topics that you'd like to learn, please let us know in the comments below, and let us know how you're going to enjoy or maybe not so much enjoy this colder weather ahead, but it's kind of inevitable. But we'll keep you all updated. Have a good one.
Bye.